I'm a women's gender and sexuality studies major. I'm double majoring in human rights.
I'm a horticulture major and a studio arts minor.
I'm an actuarial science major.
I'm a sociology major.
Digital media and design.
I'm an illustration major.
I'm an animation illustration major.
I'm an urban and community studies major with a focus in social justice advocacy and community building.
Typically when people ask how I identify, I will say that I'm a trans man. And to me, that means I'm a person of masculine center, and the way that I present is typically characterized as masculine.
I mostly identify as non-binary just because I think it's a nice umbrella because I don't know how to classify myself more specifically.
Being perceived as female is the ultimate goal. Just like going out and dressing the way I want, whatever that means to me, like skirts, leggings, things like that. Longer hair.
For me, I just kind of identify as trans-masculine because it's just, I feel more masculine than feminine.
I usually say that I'm genderqueer.
At the moment, I'd say I identify as gender fluid.
I identify as a genderqueer individual.
I don't consider myself trans, I consider myself gender-nonconforming.
So my definition would be a queer-bodied trans-masculine person. If I was talking to somebody who's not so well versed with the community, I would just say a transgender man.
I've only come out to a couple people. My whole life I knew I was different from like other men, which sounds kind of cliche. I've been able to like realize my feminine side and like what that actually meant. It's not just like I'm a feminine male, it's like, okay, I'm actually a female.
The one thing I did was like in September, so I like changed my pronouns on Facebook, which is like very subtle. Like only like certain people will catch it, and like a few of my friends just like text me like, oh, do you want to use these pronouns? I was like, if I change them, then like, yes.
By the time I got to UConn, my junior year, I was already out as a trans person. My record showed that I was male, so I didn't have to deal with it so much on Storrs campus.
Towards my junior year, I realized that this wasn't enough. Like, considering myself a lesbian wasn't my true identity, and I felt like I kept falling into this like continuum where I'd say that everything's okay, you know yourself, when in the back of my mind I was like, I don't know who I am.
So I didn't know myself. I hadn't yet discovered what I felt about my own gender. I'd kind of just been handed a gender box and like tried my best to fill it.
In recent years, the development of my gender identity has kind of become more complicated. My understanding of gender has changed to be less in a binary sense or on a kind of opposite scale of masculine and feminine, and more to this is just what I feel comfortable in. What the gender binary is about and being outside of it, I feel like a lot more freedom in how I express myself now. Whereas before I felt so like constricted to present and express myself a certain way.
I was actually talking with my athletic advisor. It really made me have this almost like epiphany that I don't like living this double life.
I'm still learning about my gender as I speak.
You can tell that there are people who have just never even thought about learning about pronouns or learning about different gender identities and thinking I could have someone in my classroom who I may read one way but may identify in a different way.
I'm really glad that it's like becoming more known to like ask about pronouns and stuff like that, but it's still like, it feels like we have a long way to go before like it feels truly safe on campus. Nobody knows that they can be used as a term rather than he or she.
At the very least, there's some students that don't understand, but they want to.
I'm honestly really proud of the effort the faculty and students have made to accommodate me and other people.
I don't think there's any outright transphobia that I have necessarily faced directly, but I do hear things that are homophobic. I hear things, just the other day I heard people outside of my dorm saying faggot.
I usually don't wear like skirts or anything in class, but if I wear them outside of class, I've had experiences where people have laughed or like driving by have screamed obscenities at me and stuff like that. It's scary, especially when you're like walking by yourself late at night, because you never know if they're gonna like leave it at like verbal insults or like go to like move to aggression, or like that's always a possibility.
I would say the biggest issue for me has always been the bathroom in public. Prior to transitioning, I would pretty much avoid public restrooms at all costs. And to this day, I still, every time I walk into a bathroom, I have a twinge of kind of fear that will strike me.
I was in the men's room and some guy like followed me in a few seconds later and was like trying to look through like where the door opens. He like stayed there for a few seconds more and then walked away, and kind of I heard him like near the sink, but he wasn't really doing anything. It kind of just sounded like he was standing there. It was awkward also that I saw him in the hallway and he saw me come out, and so he was kind of staring at me until I was out of sight, so that was like really uncomfortable.
I'll just use the women's bathroom, and sometimes I just go in there and I'm like, I don't feel like I belong here. And I'm always afraid that I'll like I never pass, so I always think that if I ever do pass, like I'll get yelled at, and I don't want that to happen. But if I use the men's bathroom, people are gonna be like, what the hell are you doing in here? So I don't wanna create that problem. So like if there is a gender neutral bathroom, I will use it. I think it's important that they're there so that when people come to UConn that are new, they don't feel unsafe.
I think at face value, UConn gets to say we have a lot of resources, right? But at the end of the day, person-to-person interaction, people still don't get it. I'm still not understood here. I'm still the one educating my professors. I still have professors asking me somewhat inappropriate questions in the form of, I want to get more information, so I'm going to ask you, when it's not my job to necessarily educate you. You should have that education.
One of my art professors, she'd inquired about why I signed my name different, and so I explained to her, and I thought, okay, now this is kind of, in her mind. But come next semester, first day of class, she does, roll call and says my birth name out loud. And I tried to tell her, like, I don't go by that name, I don't want people knowing that name.
When I was in that situation, I thought to myself, this could have been avoided if you just read last names. I mean, it's as simple as all you have to do is read the last names.
I was in one of my WIGS classes. My discussion TA was saying to go around, say your name and like something you'll bring to a picnic, and then like use your pronouns. And so I was like, oh, I use they them pronouns and I'm bringing blah. And then the guy next to me would have to say my name and they're bringing whatever. And he was like, she's bringing, and I was like, that's what it's for. You missed the whole point.
So when you misgender someone, so that's if I ask you to use they pronouns and you refuse to do so, or you forget really frequently, or don't really seem to be making an effort to do that, that's a microaggression. It's a small, seemingly insignificant act that over time, when you experience that day in and day out from everyone in your life, really builds up and has a bigger impact than it really seems like it would.
If somebody's having like a panic attack because they're like, please stop calling me the wrong thing, they will leave the classroom during these times to like compose themselves.
I think a lot of people, think that like maybe it's like a minor discomfort at like most, when really it can be trigger incredible anxiety and dysphoria.
I took a class at Waterbury. It was like a human sexuality class. She had a trans woman come in to speak to the class, which was great. And then the next day, the professor for the class was going to go over the more like formal terms again and do a review of what we learned in the class before. And all of a sudden she puts up the picture of them pre-transition. Next slide, picture of them after they transition, male to female. And she goes, now doesn't he look nice in his new blouse? And I'm sitting there and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, I just came out to you the class before, there's a trans person in this classroom, and you find that to be appropriate. What are you now thinking of me?
I think that some of these professors just don't even know what certain things are.
Part of me just feels awkward to have to ask and like reroute their brain to, no, that's not that's not me.
It makes me feel othered when I'm the only one asking for this. It feels kind of like a favor or something, like something extra and not something that should be expected.
They should be more inclusive. They're not inclusive enough. Maybe faculty should go through some kind of like training.
I had a couple of professors, tell me, okay, this is kind of the first time for me. I may mess up every now and then, but please let me know if I'm doing something wrong. At least if someone says, please let me know, I feel that I at least can approach them.
It's all about creating a welcoming environment, and if you can't make an environment for your students in which they feel comfortable talking, your ratings are gonna be pretty bad because students aren't gonna want to talk. Students aren't, gonna want to participate. They're not gonna feel safe in your classroom, and ultimately, as a professor, I would think that that's a goal.
If someone tells you, this is what my name is and this is what I want to be called, you should respect that. Furthermore, just on a general basis, don't judge people, I guess, like on anything, especially things they can't control, honestly, like the way they feel.
It's important to make the effort at the very least to recognize those students and say, I see you for who you are and I'm gonna respect that.
It eliminates so many stresses from my mind automatically that I can perform better academically. Because it eats away at you for the rest of the day sometimes. Use my pronouns as much as possible so that people kind of, get the hint.
I think the professor sets the tone in the classroom. If they're awkward about it, it's gonna make other people uncomfortable about it. Whereas if they kind of have a baseline knowledge of, okay, we got this, it's fine.
Hearing from some of my professors on the first day, if you go by another name and pronouns, please tell me because I want to know. That makes me and probably a lot of other transgender kids feel so much more comfortable.
Normalizing asking for pronouns is important in society in general because we tend to see it as this oh, why are you asking me that? It should be obvious kind of thing, which some people are trans. Sometimes you can't tell.
When you always do those introductions, like your name, your major, but it's your name, your pronouns, your major, whatever, just to respect each other and because you never know who's in the room who feels affected by that.
Professors also encouraging students to respect one another is absolutely vital in the syllabus, in daily discussions, monitoring small group discussions, and taking complaints from students very seriously as well.
Literally the only thing holding most of UConn back is lack of education on the subject.
Go talk to somebody or reach out to a colleague and say, hey, I have a student, they're trans, I just want a baseline knowledge. What are the terms I need to know? Where can I go for help?
So I would like to see some active involvement from the university saying, we care about these students and we see you. Because for a very long time, trans people have gone without being seen.
I feel that's really important to just be inclusive of all different kinds of people and include intersectionality in your conversations.
Awkward interactions are gonna happen. If you're not well versed in this, you're gonna mess it up. It's gonna happen. But if you learn from it and you take the opportunity to listen to that trans person that you're speaking with and having them tell you what makes them comfortable and just saying, okay, we'll work on it, as long as you're making strides to consciously be aware of that and making those improvements, you're fine.
I want to see a campus where everyone is able to express themselves freely without fear of being harassed or being excluded or feeling like they don't belong at UConn.